So in the last couple of modules, we talked about the 4 stages of training: explanation or theory, modeling, practice, and coaching. And we talked about how important that coaching is, especially after the classroom, and how that creates the difference in having a nice conversation with people versus actually seeing measurable change. So now I want to talk about one of my favorite pieces that fits into that coaching puzzle that's called the implementation dip. And the concept, I think, is pretty intuitive, but then we don't necessarily think about it in real life. And all it means is that if you want to create change, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So if you think about it, maybe someone is coming along, they've developed, over time, they've got this real nice basis for a front kick, and they're in that plateau period. And we give them new information and expect them, to incorporate it and go boom out of the plateau. And if you yourself have been in a plateau, you know that that's not really, maybe sometimes it works that way, but if you're really grinding against it, that's not really how things work. So in fact, a lot of times what we're doing when we give people new information is we're asking them to do something new. It's not just, an adjustment. We're not just adjusting something they already do. We're asking them to kind of form different processes and thought patterns and brain-body connections. So especially in this physical environment, that's actually really difficult. And it makes sense to us as the people who've already gone through it. We kind of forget about those dips sometimes. And we give that information out, and we're sometimes a little bit shocked that people just don't get it. This is easy, this is obvious. And worse, in my opinion, is that students may be surprised that they just don't get it. They may be looking at this, especially if you're saying, you go back to our, what's wrong with you, right? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with them? Or what's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? If we're in that conversation and the students see it, and we're either saying you're doing something wrong or I'm doing something wrong, then they internalize that as a negative, and it goes, kind of plummeting downhill. Where if we can say, hey, we're moving along and I just threw you a curveball, I gave you new information, and actually as I ask you to do something new, it's going to get a little bit worse for a while. And that's a real hard thing to stomach. We it's like no one wants to see the stock market go up, down, back up, we want to see nice, steady progress. And unfortunately, just like with the stocks, education doesn't work that way either. But something that we can rely on a little bit is, as we're dipping, first off, if we allow students to get discouraged, if they lose patience, if something happens and they get stuck in that dip and they're not brought out of it, yes, they will be worse than when you started. That's a real negative side effect that can happen. And yet if we're not pushing them, they will never go on the upswing either. So some things I found really important is that as you enter that down mode, coaching is really important, and verbalizing it, letting people know that this is supposed to happen. This is actually a sign of progress. And it doesn't feel like it, and it feels like dying, and it feels like all your training is for nothing. And trust me, I have been there. And when I was there, one of my instructors said to me, oh yeah, I was flying out to Dallas constantly. Every month I'd fly out to Dallas to work with him, and I felt like I was getting worse and worse and worse. So, and I'm already a black belt in other arts. I feel like I'm losing some of my skill. I'm not getting it. I don't understand how to do these new maneuvers. They're really subtle and intricate and difficult. And I finally called him and said, I don't know what to do. And this is the coaching he gave me is, oh, I wondered when you'd call about that. And he sat down and proceeded to tell me, yeah, I've been through it, and this is what it means. This is what it means that you're having a hard time. You're actually about to spike. You're actually about to jump in your skill and ability because your brain and your body are figuring it out again. But you can't just rewire that overnight. That was some of the best advice that I ever got, some of the best counsel I ever got in martial arts or in anything. And it was the permission to not be perfect, the permission to struggle, the permission to even fail. And as long as that coaching is in place, then it's a good thing. That those little stumbling blocks are a good thing, that students are going through that, because that means you're pushing them. Now, if they're falling and you're not catching them at all, then that's going to be a negative experience for them. But good coaching, properly applied, is going to bring them through those dips and into, what we all hang out for. You go through that little dip and you get to the bottom of it, and then it brings you to the next rise up there. So we get what we're going for, which is improved performance, improved mechanics and presentation, and all those things that we're looking for. The thing is, without, if you already were good at that, you would already be good at it. The thing is, when we put something new in, students have to play with it. They have to turn it over in their hands, look at it, toss it up in the air a little bit, and a couple of times it's going to drop on the floor. And that means they're working with something new, and we have to encourage that. It's difficult for teachers, it's difficult for students. It's the only way to improve. And if you're a good coach and you're bringing people through that and encouraging them, being honest about the process and saying, yeah, this is what happens, isn't this great? You're improving, you're growing. You're really realizing the purpose of the martial arts, which isn't to be perfect, it's to be better. That's my take on it. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm going to fail at that 100% of the time. But maybe today I can be a little bit better than I was yesterday. And sometimes getting better means getting worse first. If we can get comfortable with that, then that'll allow us to learn and grow a lot more than we otherwise could.